Hey everyone, welcome to Moment's inaugural Zoom to Facebook Live. I hope you don't mind if there are any technical difficulties. We're just learning as we go. And also hopefully this will be the start of a series that we're going to do where Moment editors and writers can talk about the stories that they're working on with everyone else. So as some of you may know, it is Moment's 45th anniversary. And as part of that, I've been going through our archives. And one thing I noticed was that we have some very interesting covers and some very controversial covers. In general, magazine covers are kind of an odd thing because they're there to tantalize you, to draw you in, basically to get you to buy a magazine off the newsstand. At the same time, they need to reflect the values and the interests of the publication and also of its audience. I'm sure some of you remember the famous New Yorker covers. There's a one with a chassid and the African-American woman during the kissing and making out during the Crown Heights riots. There's the one with Michelle Obama and Barack Obama doing that terrorist fist bump that got so much attention. So Moment itself also had some controversial covers. And today we're going to do a short tour of some of the more interesting ones. Because as you take a look, you can see some themes developing, and you can see what concerned, what excited American Jews over the past 45 years. So one big thing that concerned American Jews was making sure Jewish singles got married. And in this cover from 1988, you can see that turning Jewish singles into spouses. There's 3 stories inside about the Jewish singles crisis. And the big one is about how synagogues should become the breeding ground, or like the meeting ground for where more singles can meet, and how synagogues have to become more proactive in that. You can see here we have, a man and a woman, it's obviously a mixed seating synagogue, checking each other out and maybe turning them into a bride and a groom. This continued 2 years later when we had Past to Present, The Art of Matchmaking. And here is a history, inside there's a history of matchmaking, starting from the early days of shadchans and shtetls, and then going to more high-end matchmakers in 1990, who can cost thousands of dollars. One thing that was interesting about the story inside was the discussion of the AIDS crisis. In the piece, one reason the author gave for why more singles are turning toward matchmaking is because they didn't want to be casually dating because of the AIDS crisis. And then the author asked all the matchmakers if they asked their clients to take an AIDS test before taking them on. And half of them said yes, and half of them said no. So I think this is a real glimpse into sort of the thought process that was happening in 1990. So why are we so concerned about matchmaking? Because I think if we go to the next slide, mixed marriage soup. Moment's audience was very concerned about interfaith marriages, and more particularly what will happen to the children. So this is maybe my favorite Moment cover. You see the little people in the front. It says, OU is crossed out, Parav, mixed marriage soup with children of intermarriage, not kosher for Passover, maybe not kosher at all. So the story inside is actually by an adult child of an intermarriage. And she discusses what having these dual identities, what it's like. She says that she and her friends are called the Paravs because they're neither milk nor meat. They're somewhere in the middle. I don't think that name didn't really catch on. But that is something, but the theme of intermarriage and stopping intermarriage is something that comes up so many times in Moment, especially in the 80s and 90s. Here we have a 1991 cover, A New Leap of Faith. the bride and the groom reaching over. And the story inside is about how the way to stop intermarriage is accepting that Jews are probably going to marry non-Jews, but the goal should be to try to convert them. So the article inside is calling for a more evangelical type of Judaism and how that could actually solve what they call an intermarriage crisis. Which leads us to the reason why people are so concerned about intermarriages, the babies. This cover, which will he choose? Outreach could make the difference. You have a baby with a mobile on top with a Magen David and also a cross. I think this shows pretty starkly how concerned moment readers were and how they thought this was really kind of an existential crisis that was coming up. There were a lot of stories in Moment about conversion, examining who are the people converting, why are they converting. This story, which is a pretty fun cover, The New Jews, Conversions of Faith, look at people who converted who live in areas where at least the magazine article thinks Jews don't usually live, like Nebraska or Illinois, and talk to them about what brought them to Judaism and what it's like to live a Jewish life in these more, in the author's opinion, more remote areas. So Moment was not only concerned about having non-Jews convert to Judaism, but they were also very concerned about people who are trying to convert Jews to Christianity. There are so many stories in the Moment archives about Messianic Jews and Jews for Jesus, and how they're trying to trick Jews into accepting Jesus or becoming Christian. This is a pretty fun cover. You see people waiting in line for the Holy Land theme park. And I think the thought is that they're Jews, and it's sort of just to show that new gimmicks can kind of trick Jews into becoming Messianic Jews. Moment covers are also a really good way to see how social mores are changing, and how things that have been controversial aren't so controversial now. This cover from 1987, A Precious Gift, a single woman chooses motherhood with the help of science. You have a mother, you have a daughter. The piece is about a woman in DC who chooses to go through IVF and have a baby even though she's not married. The piece is anonymous because the feeling was this was so controversial and the blowback would be huge. So the woman didn't want to give her name, which is funny kind of thinking back about that, because now I don't think we would really blink an eye or care at all. Another social more being discussed or changed was adultery, apparently adultery. Would you remember the seventh commandment? This in February 1998, I think is clearly a reflection of the Clinton scandal. More and more people were talking about how adultery is pretty commonplace, and Moment was kind of choosing to reflect that and discuss if it's something that's become commonplace in the Jewish community. Another big concern of our Jewish audience was how Jews are perceived in the wider world. So in this story, Jews run Hollywood. So what? You can see, well, it's fun because you see this huge cell phone, the sunglasses. Clearly, this is how 90s movie execs are supposed to look like. But in the magazine itself, there are 3 pieces about Jewish power, and Jewish power in terms of Hollywood. Do they have it? Does it matter? And what are the implications? Moment visited Hollywood again a few years later with Tinseltown Hearts the Shoah. You can see Hollywood kind of in a snow globe in instead of the Hollywood sign, you have Holocaust, and the S is a money sign. This is about Hollywood's obsession with Holocaust movies and how after the success of Schindler's List, people are only interested in producing movies about the Shoah. And the article looks at if perhaps this is exploitative. Another entertainment-related one is the Is Woody Jewish cover. So this is actually Moment's most controversial cover, which perhaps isn't so surprising. But after it was published, Is Woody Jewish? It was an analysis profile of Woody Allen. Moment was inundated with letters about how it was inappropriate to put someone like him on the cover. But there were also a lot of letters talking about how you can't question someone's Judaism just because of their actions. It's funny, I don't know if we would have this cover today. I think you can see how kind of things have changed a little bit. So the last big theme is, unsurprisingly, Israel. Moment has so many covers about Israel, about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, about religion and state, about Israel and existential crisis. But I think the most interesting one doesn't have to do with any of those things. It's this one. It's about the new branding of Israel, why at 60, the promised land is sexier than ever. The piece is about how Moment is trying to rebrand itself as a place with beautiful women, beautiful beaches, a real tourist hotspot. Perhaps unsurprisingly, this is Moment's most popular cover. We sold on most magazines on the newsstand when we had this cover out. I guess sex does sell. So these are just a few different covers I hope you enjoyed. Moment has trafficked in nostalgia. This cover, Grossinger, is on my mind. It also kind of has goofy covers. This is a Shmuley Boteach cover. Am I too sexy for my talit? People didn't enjoy this one either. There were a lot of letters to the editor. But this is just a small tour. And let me stop share. And if you guys are interested, you should go to Moment's website and read the most recent article on looking at the 45 years of Moment through archives and how it's a reflection of American Jewish history.